And here we go. I think as soon as you chime in, our listener just might get a sense that you were born and raised somewhere outside of the United States. I believe your professional career began in motorsports. So let's start there. Is that correct?
You are correct. That's right. Born in Zambia.
Okay.
And by the time I was going to school, the family was down in South Africa.
Okay.
But my dad was a civil engineer. And so post-war, you would go wherever the work was. And so dad was, building bridges and power plants and all the rest of it, the infrastructure of Africa in the 1950s, post Second World War. So yeah, then by the time we went to school, we were based in South Africa. So my accent today is probably not purely South African. It's a mixture of American South African.
Absolutely. So then before jumping into where you and I overlap, which is in the context of Zipp, what is that? I mean, sort of expound upon what you just said. What does the pre-Zipp chapter of your life look like, and how do you ultimately land in the U.S.?
Yeah, great question. Well, you're right. It was motorsports. I was racing off-road motorcycles. Started in motocross. Was really, really bad at that. Can't sprint for toffee. So I really needed longer distance and got into enduro racing, and that made me started that in South Africa, desert racing and enduro racing. Had an opportunity to come to America and was fortunate enough to be hired by Malcolm Smith, who was a legend of the 70s. So if anybody's seen the movie On Any Sunday with there's Steve McQueen, Malcolm Smith, and Mert Lowell, and they're off just having a great time, in the dunes on their motorcycles. And it talks about that. In the 70s, of course, particularly in Southern California, this was a massive growing market, surfing and dirt bikes. Anyway, Malcolm said, "Yeah, if you can get here legally, I'll give you a job." And I was fortunate enough that he did that, and so I ended up coming and living in Southern California for a number of years, and 5 years. And then got an opportunity to move up to Washington State, and was up with a small company called Allsop.
Okay.
And they had a family-owned business, and they had developed what they called the soft ride, which was a suspension system which was not only retrofittable to bikes, but also you could design a bike around it. And it was a very unusual. Only old people will remember this, but it was a very unusual sort of a shaped beam that would fit on top of the bike and had a viscoelastic layer that would allow the two bodies to actually shear over each other. So certainly shock absorption was there, but of course it ended up with some lateral movement. You've got not only fore and aft movement, you've also got some lateral movement. And, for cyclists, especially now at this stage, right, 1989, 1990, it's all about super light, super stiff, super everything. And so this was really an anomaly. But during the course of that, my 3 years there, in the first year I was there, we were in late 80s, early 90s. Trade shows were a massive part of your marketing efforts in cycling. And we went to 3 or 4 every year. Well, I would go, and I met Lee Sargent, who had started Zipp, and he was a motor racing guy in Indianapolis, and he had completely by accident got into cycling because he met, also completely unrelated, a company at a bike show who just happened to be exhibiting at a bike show that said, hey, we want this carbon fiber, super high performance marathon wheelchair.
Okay.
And they called the carbon company, and the carbon company said, well, we can sell you carbon, but we can't actually make it for you. But we can refer you to this guy in motor racing, and he could, he's a fabricator. He'll do it. So that's how they meet at a bike show. And he's looking at disc wheels. At this point in the world, there are probably 7 or 8 different brands, lots of them. And he's like, well, what do you do with this? Not being a cyclist, why do you need this? Well, it's laterally stiff and it's very aerodynamic. And so he grabs a hold of the wheel and puts it on its axle on the table and pushes, on the edges against the axle pressure. And they went, oh, no, don't do that. That was like, well, he said, well, you said it was laterally stiff. Well, yeah, but we don't want you to break it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So He comes back, goes to literally bike shop, or try and paraphrase, but goes to a bike shop in Indianapolis, happens to be where all the trackies go in town, because we do have a velodrome.
Sure.
Happens to find the right trackie who happens to be at the store that day and says, hey, what do you guys do? Oh, we write 19 millimeter tires. We glue them on. And what's a good track wheel look like? Oh, it's one of these. He gets the rim, he gets the profile, does the whole thing. And he comes back and he basically prototypes it in what you call an autoclave, which for motor racing, you use an autoclave all the time. And it's essentially a oven that can handle pressure. So it looks like a submarine on legs, essentially, or on feet, so that you can create atmospheric pressure as well as pull. You put a bag over the product, you pull it out, you pull the air out, and all you're trying to do is get massive compression with the carbon and evacuate the resin. Nobody in the bike industry has a need, honestly, for an autoclave, right? It just happens to be that he has one. And so he prototypes these things. They're amazing. Goes to the next bike show where I meet him, 1989. He's got disc wheels, and he puts them on the floor and stands on them.
Oh, wow.
So horizontally, right? So he's rocking on the axle. And of course, every cyclist there, and mostly bike dealers, right?
Yeah.
They're like, well, what on earth are you doing, right? And they said, well, this is, you want lateral stiffness. This is lateral stiffness, and literally, not being a sales or commercially minded guy, he would say to them, well, we think, we think we can build them for this much money. Would you buy them? And a couple of guys said, okay, yeah, we'll buy them. We're in the disc business. I mean, and that literally is it's literally how Zipp started.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go in a variety of directions. Did Zipp exist as a name, or was he just there? Was it so early that he showed up with a wheel and said, is this even viable?
Yeah, I know. Zipp, the name was there. So for a non-marketing guy, I have to give him full credit. Him and his wife essentially were looking for a single syllable, easy to remember. And this is another great story. All right, single syllable, easy to remember name.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, they come up with hundreds, and then one of them is Zipp. Okay. So they go to register as a trademark, and they realize, oh no, there is a Zipp. It pre-exists, and it's a gentleman, I think, out of the Northwest somewhere, that builds recumbent fairings. So Lexan, I think it's called Zipp fairings, just 1P. Okay. And beautiful product, but very small market, very specific market. And they called him up and said, we just love this name, and you haven't registered your name. But we'd like to register it. And the gentleman was like, absolutely. No, as long as you don't come into my business, that's totally fine with me. And so they agreed that they would add another P to it. Yep. So that's how it got its second P. And they said, okay, off we went and registered, and that was that. And then so over the next couple of years, so now he's doing business as Zipp and selling disc wheels. And then I see him, of course, 3, 4, 5 times a year because of the trade show, sure. And then a couple of races every now and then. Those opportunities don't exist today. So it's just funny how the whole industry's changed. But and so that's sort of how we went together. And actually, ironically, it's funny how the world works. It was a third party that said to both of us individually, essentially, you know what, you need somebody to run the front end of this business. And he said to me, you really should talk to this guy, because he needs somebody to run the front end of the business, and he's really good on the back end. And, and that's essentially how we started talking, and eventually how I became part of the Zipp family.
And so Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee's background was in motorsports. Is that correct also?
Motorsports, yeah. So
is that a coincidence that you both shared that? Or, I mean, do you think that was also gravitational to bring the two of you together? Or was it purely the third party who said, you know what, you guys need to connect?
Yeah, we had no idea that we shared a passion for motorsports. Okay. There was no idea. I grew up with a dad that loved racing and motor racing. We couldn't afford to obviously do it, so we went to it as fans. We were fans of the motorsports, and he had grown up in Australia, was a patent maker, did an additional apprenticeship in the UK, and immediately after graduation there, he went to Williams. So he was with Williams Formula One for a year and decided, okay, I'm going back to Oz. but I think I'll go via America and work for an IndyCar team, and that's how we ended up in Indianapolis.
Okay.
And then of course, like most IndyCar teams, they run out of money. I mean, if you're not in the top 3 IndyCar programs, they run out of money. You know, at some point he was let go, and he started his own composite repair shop because the opportunity had just sort of coming into it where Indy cars were transitioning from aluminium chassis with carbon Kevlar body panels to actual carbon tubs, which Formula One had been doing now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So really, there was nobody in the motor racing fraternity at that time in Indianapolis that actually understood that, composite structures is a series of laminates. And if you have a fracture, let's say a guy hits the wall, does some damage to the tub. Well, is the tub safe or not? You can't, unlike aluminum, where you can see right away if there's a bend or a crack or something. Right. You don't see that with carbon. So it is a much more complicated repair and requires some expertise, and it requires an autoclave and things like that. So that's how he then starts his repair shop, literally in a garage in Indianapolis for composite parts for motor racing. Wow. So then, and then the bike thing he started when he got into that, as we just previously discussed, he actually set it up as a separate entity, and they were just coexisting in the same space.
Sure.
Yeah, but so
when you're in Southern California and then go up to Washington and are beginning to work in the cycling industry, what is your area of expertise? You talked a little bit front end, back end. Are you in the marketing? Are you in design? Are you in finance? What is it that you're doing at Soft Ride, for example, that's taking you to the trade shows?
Yeah, no, great question. Sales manager. I was just a sales manager there. So I'd done my sort of business apprenticeship in South Africa at a very large retail organization called Wiltrue, sort of like Nordstrom's.
Okay.
If you imagine Nordstrom's with about 20% of its volume coming from a gourmet food market, that was the kind of business. But I went there after my military training in college to get into their junior management development program because it was recognized as one of the leading management development programs in the country. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to get in there, and a great company taught me an immense amount. But then I was very interested in business, but neither of my folks were in business. And so, trying to transition into business had no sort of guidance. And so I just started to educate myself with business biographies. So I'd get books from Lee Iacocca, from Jack Welch, from, all these, and I just start devouring them and making notes and just honestly self-learning, just how it was going. But my role at Soft Ride was sales management. Of course, I didn't realize at the time that they were also a manufacturing company, and I was the mechanic in my brain was just fascinated by manufacturing. So there was a tool shop. We had machines there, the CNC machines, 3 and 4 and 5 axis, making these injection molds, and then making the molded product. So I was just fascinated by all of this, and all those folks were gracious enough to share their knowledge, with me. Yeah. And that sort of satisfied my mechanical, my backyard mechanic mentality. And but I started to find the whole manufacturing side absolutely fascinating. And then, of course, as I say, my first year there, I meet Lee and spent the next couple of years working for Soft Ride, trying to sell this suspension system, which at that point, we didn't have a bike. Eventually, they moved into having a bike built specifically for it.
That's when I can start to picture it. I can picture the Soft Ride now, that swooping top tube, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah, and then the tube of the bike would come down, and you'd have this beam up on top. Yeah. When built into a frame, it could look quite elegant. But as a retrofitted item, which is all I really had to sell, it was very Rube Goldberg, right? And it would never work on today's frames. We were so lucky in those days. Bikes were chromoly and aluminium. Yeah. So you had some resident stiffness and more importantly, a uniform tube wall thickness. Right. So you could rely on that. If you're going to start clamping on it. Today's bikes, people can crack their top tube, their carbon top tubes, by just putting it in a work stand.
Yeah.
So imagine retrofitting somebody to that top tube and putting your body weight on it. Just never work. Would never work.
Yeah, and I mean, it also goes to show soft ride is ahead of its time. I mean, this day and age, with so many bikes do have suspension built in, it's really cool to hear early stories. So how about when you go on to begin working with Zipp, how big is the team? Is it just the two of you? What is the goal of Lee at that time? What are those early days at Zipp look like?
Well, it's a good question. The team was probably the two of us plus a handful of others. Okay. And I'd say 2 or 3 folks. And those 2 or 3 folks also could pinch hit in the motor racing side as well. So, I mean, literally he's selling 150 discs a year. That's not really a company, right? That's just an opportunity. And I came in, I was a minority partner in the firm. Yeah, on the bike side, purely on the bike side, and then the whole objective was, hey, you build it, and and he would increase the capacity on the back end so that we can make more product and see if we can get into it. But in those early days, it was so difficult, right? We'd go. I was a reasonably good salesperson. I would travel with reps. I'd go to dealers, literally 4, 5, 6 dealers a day.
Yeah.
We would talk about product, trying to sell them. At that point, we had also developed a 3-spoke. So we had a disc, we had a 3-spoke. I would be trying to sell wheels to dealers and literally sell nothing all day. And 4 days in a row, you sell a handful. You sell 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 there, nothing much. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would be at expos nearly 2 weekends out of 4 at predominantly triathlons. And triathletes were a complete not. Remember, at this point, retail is controlled by roadies, old classic roadies, right? So many of whom don't want to wear a helmet, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking very traditional, and track riders, and they're all reasonably good mechanics. They're all very accomplished on their bike, and pretty conservative when it comes to bike design and component design.
Yeah.
Triathletes, on the other hand, are, well, why do I need this? Well, it's extremely aerodynamic, it's light, and this is what it'll do for you over that 40K time trial that you're riding in the middle of it. Do you have a 40K loop you traditionally ride? Oh, yeah, I know exactly where it is. Okay, well, you buy these, put them on your bike, do your 40K at race speed. We almost can guarantee you're going to be faster because of the aerodynamic savings. Now, remember, the competition at this point is square aluminum rims, right? Traditional rims.
Was there anything aero about aluminum rims then, or no? Like a wheel is a wheel is a wheel.
Yeah, that's right. And I'd say that was a predominant, right? Now Campy started with things like the Shamal. Remember the Shamal, like the deep section, as deep as you can get with aluminum.
Yep.
So they tried to do. Companies did try and do it, but it's eternally difficult because you have to, that is an extrusion which comes out as a straight bar, and you literally have to roll that into a circle. So the deeper you go, the harder it is to get that thing to come around without folding, right? It's just going to try and crease. So there were folks trying to do the aero thing, but it was really a mentality shift, because triathletes say, well, how much is it? Where do I get it? And why do I need it? Right? There was no real hesitation once they understood that this was advantageous to their performance, which was honestly a completely different mindset to what was going on in the retail channel for bicycle stores in general in the United States. And so I basically stopped. I said to all the reps, like, I'm not going to travel with you until we get some sort of momentum, and the momentum is going to be built with the consumer. And so we literally went to 2 or 3 of us. At this point, the team has grown a little bit at Zipp. We are making the deep section rims and making a hub. We were bonding hubs together, but making some of the aluminum parts at a local machine shop. Wow. So we had what is the precursor, the forerunner of what we know today as deep section rims, deep section wheels. And the only other company doing that was Head up in Steve and Annie Head up in Minnesota. Yeah. And so literally we are trying to convince the world you need a carbon wheel. And the only people in the world that have any interest are these triathletes. Mm-hmm. At that point, they're all sew-ups, so the tires have to be glued onto the rim. And of course, triathletes, no disrespect, but they're not very good mechanics, right? And they also, and more so, even more important, they don't want to be good mechanics, right? And so this is a fantastic opportunity for shops. Uh-huh. And so, because, and you would hear dealers go like, these flipping triathletes, they bring their bikes in here and they're filthy. They haven't even washed them from the last race. Yeah. And I feel like you just charge them $150, wash the bike, then service. They'll pay you happily. Did you see the car he pulled up in? Oh, yeah, it's a blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is just an opportunity. This is just a major opportunity. Sure. And it seemed to go quite fast. Once that momentum started to build, we started to sell a lot of product. We sold all the product we could make. It still wasn't a lot of product, but it was predominantly deep section rims, as wheel kits and as wheels, and that was sort of how we had to concentrate, right? So that's how we just really focused on it and set up distributors. We had a number of distributors worldwide, and of course they were trying to coach them on do exactly the same thing. This is the market. Let's go get this market. And at this time, triathlon is growing. I mean, we went from 13,000 members in Triathlon Federation to 10 years later, I think there was 250,000 members. So. Absolutely the right time to be in the game. There are triathletes then that also decide that, these dealers don't know what they're doing. I'm going to set up a dealership and I'm going to do it. And once that started to happen, everything changed. Today, of course, you would do everything DTC, right? You do it all direct to consumer in many cases. Right. In those days, we couldn't, mostly because we needed to be confident that the tires would be glued on correctly, that the cluster would be put on correctly. It was 5, 6, 7 speed right at that point, but that this was all done really properly. And now we're back to our traditional bicycle shops. The guys that embraced the opportunity went, yep, I can do all of that, right? I've been doing that for 20 years, no problem. Right. And so we had to go through stores. So we created a system where we'd go to these races, and we would have a little flip chart, like a little study card that your kids are going to use at school. Yeah. And we literally pre-printed them, and you would a triathlete would come up to the booth, and we'd say, right, let's have a look. And they say, well, I love these wheels. Well, what are you 5 speed, 7 speed? Do you have I don't know. We said, just bring us your bike. Uh-huh. They'd bring the bike. We'd go through it, right? It's a tubular, it's a 7 speed, it's a Campy, it's a Shimano, whatever it is. We'd fill in the form for them. Uh-huh. And we'd say, well, who's your local shop? Well, it's, Bob's Bikes. And he said, but he doesn't have anything in stock. No problem. You have Bob call this number, and when he calls us, we'll take it the rest of the way. Oh, okay, perfect. Bob would call, we'd tell, okay, Bob, and literally the conversation goes, yeah, I've got a guy with a card, and it's got this number on it. Yes, exactly. Tell me about it, Bob. And that's sort of how it went. And we could explain to Bob, listen, you need to not only sell them 2 GP Continentals to put on those rims, but you need to sell them a third pre-glued to put behind the saddle, because he's going to need that in the race. Yeah. He needs quick releases, and he needs a cluster. Mm-hmm. He will pay you for all of those things, plus an installation, and he's going to be very, very happy. So now he's got his normal wheels, his training wheels, he's got these things, his race wheels. All he has to do is go like that, put him in the bike, he's off. Right. And once that started to catch, we were really able then to magnify the volume a little bit. And all was going similarly each year. So from 92 through to 96, we're growing all of the time. As fast as we can make product, I'm finding a place to sell it. We'll, somewhere in the world. Yeah. And 97, we almost lost the company. You probably remember a company called Spinergy, yes. The carbon spoked wheel. Sure. They had raised a lot of money from an investment perspective. Again, certainly at that time, we had no comprehension of how that worked. But they had productionized that wheel. They'd put in capacity that was unbelievable. So way, way bigger than the market could actually sustain.
Yeah.
And they started to make lots and lots of wheels. Well, the only way to really place those wheels was to put them into retailers on consignment. And the moment that happens, many dealers would say, well, I have a carbon wheel, now we're a Zipp trying to sell in. We say, well, the dealer would say, well, I don't necessarily need that wheel. I have a carbon wheel. So if somebody comes in here, it was the old bait and switch, right? Mm-hmm. They're coming in with their Zipp request and ending up with a Spinergy. Oh, it's just the same, only cheaper.
Yeah. And it's right there.
That is right there. Yeah. Brian, you take it home today. I'll put it on your bike today. So that was very difficult. So in 1997, that really hurt us badly, and I believe it hurt Steve and Annie as well. And we almost lost the business. Okay. But during that time, it also created an opportunity. I saw it. I looked at it and said, we had done the testing on Spinergy wheel, and we knew there was an issue. And the issue was not necessarily, it was aerodynamically, we didn't think it worked very well, but more so, it was a cornering stiffness disparity. When you lean that wheel over, it would behave differently. Okay. And the reason for that is the spokes, it was a paired spoke design, if you recall. So the spokes came down from both sides of the hub flange and met at the rim. Yep. So at that point, the rim was very well supported, but then there was a quarter of the rim that was exposed. And there was not enough stiffness in that quarter of the rim to resist the cornering force. Mm-hmm. So you would have a wheel that would be stiff and not stiff and stiff and not stiff as it was rotating. Sure. In a straight line, almost impossible to tell. In a corner, it would behave a little bit weird. So we had convinced ourselves that we were dealing with a competitor that was the same as us, which of course was mistake number one. Mm-hmm. Never assume this, right? And ended up in a position where we, they overcame that. And we would just keep telling our reps and our dealers, we think this is an issue. Anyway, somewhere along the line, they also had so much money to use to grow the market that they put wheels into pro teams. And so they folks in the Tour de France, a number of teams, not just one team. And of course, they were riding it because it was groovy and cool. There was an accident and an athlete got severely hurt. Because I don't know if it was even a wheel failure, but something happened that one of the guys' leg went. There's too much space between the spokes. His leg went in, and there was a laceration. So apparently, the story goes. Never seen the details, but it was a significant laceration of one of the rider's calves, and the UCI reactionary turned around and said, "Okay, we're done. None of those anymore. Plus, we're going to work on a wheel standard." Okay. So at this point, all testing is done by individual companies coming up with what they think is a safe product. But the UCI determines, hey, we actually can't, which is, of course, a good acknowledgement from their perspective, is you can't have a wheel with that much space that you can get a body part through the spokes, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. Uh-huh. So, and it's a rotating, it's a rotating item. It's a flipping egg beater going all the time. So they came up with a set of standards. And the first standards were didn't make any sense, but they're standards. So now everybody has to comply. Mm-hmm. What that did, business-wise, what that whole thing did was, of course, really hurt Spinergy. And they had to overcome, because they were now out of the pro peloton, out of road racing. And fortunately for us, there had been some failures in the normal market. And we had just sort of stayed the course. From a business perspective, Lee, the original founder and designer of the early Zipp wheels, said, "I don't have an appetite for this bike business. It's very peculiar. I don't understand it." Because he was still running his automotive, fabrication business in the building. Yeah. And that created an opportunity for me to buy him out. So that would have been end of 97, right? Okay. So end of 97, we were on the ropes, and it created an opportunity for me to buy his ownership, and that all occurred in 1998. So now it's a whole new world. So it's me saying, hey, there's a market out there. We can do this. And I have a couple of investors who were triathletes that said, oh, okay, we'll go with you. We'll go with you on this one. And the bank, of course, and I leveraged everything, sold everything, dirt bikes, bicycles, cars, a lot to go in. And that all happened in '98. And then from there, we just started to build again. So it was literally two lives. It was two lives at Zipp, '92 through end of '97, and then from '98 all the way through to '07. Well, December of '07 when SRAM came along. So it's two distinct sort of lives.
Yeah, most certainly multiple chapters in there. Did you have cold feet, like when Lee was stepping out and saying, you know what, I'm gonna take a big step back here? Did you have any apprehension, or were you confident there is a future here?
That was a great question. The salesman in me was like, "This is fantastic. We're going to do this."
Yeah.
The neophyte accountant in me was saying, "This is really big." When my very good friends are saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, are you sure?" So yeah, certainly lots of apprehension. I mean, a lot of it, and looking at it, because if anything had gone pear-shaped almost anywhere along the line, it would have been the end, right? Yeah. It was precarious from day one.
Right.
So we had to make a good product. We had to sell that product, and that product couldn't come back. So we had to build a good enough product that we were having no warranty issues or anything else. So these became those three things were absolutely of paramount importance. My wife, who is an unbelievable partner in life and but also in business, she handled all the HR and stuff, and it's like, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? We go back to zero where we were when we came to the country. When we arrived, we had absolutely no money at all, and we go back to that, and we've done it before. We'll just rebuild again, and that's coming from a non-risk taker, But finally, at the end of the day, she said, "I believe in you. I believe in if you think this is a product category, I'm with you."
Yeah.
And so I was incredibly fortunate, right? So and then off we went, and it was a battle. It was years of proper battling, and 100% of the money every year, any profit we made, which took a couple of years, but I just plowed it all right back into product development. Never really pulled money out of the company. And then we went through some really critical steps very early in that. So '99, I think I pulled in our first lean manufacturing folks, because I didn't understand. I heard about it. I knew about it. This is, the backyard mechanic, as they say, in your lizard brain, you've read something about lean manufacturing. How do we do that? How do we install that? So I managed to find a local company that were amazing. They came in, and the very first thing they said to me, and this has helped me, this clarity has helped me with every organization I've worked with post. They said, "Well, what do you want?" I'm like, "We want to make more product. We want to sell more product." Well, how much more product? Well, how do we know? How do you know that you're succeeding? And suddenly, for a guy that can talk a lot and have all these big plans and work hard and a little bit like a Tasmanian devil, not much direction, just a lot of effort. They made us think, and then we had to come up with a strategic objective for the organization that was not unit driven or anything else. And so the objective for us at this point, remember, we are still really pioneering. We're now a little more dominant force in triathlon. Yep. There's still a demand for the product. We are slowly getting into recreational road riders, slowly. But our lead time for product is long. It's still 3-4 weeks, depending on if you're in the season, it could be longer. And so we said, right, we want to ship 80% of our business, we want to ship in 48 hours.
Wow.
Because our customers, so many of our triathlete customers would call, and this is not exaggeration, they call on Tuesday or Wednesday and tell you they're racing on Saturday. Right. Could you get the wheels to me?
Yeah.
Like, well, even if we could, do you think it's a good idea to put them on to go race the very next day? But that was the level of commitment and the level of enthusiasm, for the brand, and not just for the brand, for the technology, because bikes were still coming. I mean, if you think about tri bikes at that stage, they're coming with standard wheels. So the very first thing people want to do is put aero bars and aero wheels, right? Those are the obvious things. If I'm going to be taken seriously, even at a local triathlon, I at least need to have those things. And so, that was really that demand was there. And so we said, right, 80% in 48 hours, and international orders we want out in 10 working days so that we could have time to stage them and get them ready. And they said, right, now that is something we can get off to. And so that became their marching orders, and then they guided us. We moved every single part in the building moved, and then as we grew into thankfully we were in a building that we could expand in the same building, and so with every sort of expansion that we did, taking another piece, we reorganized, and so every winter it became, hey, how do we maximize what we have? And of course, you're changing it. Towards the end of it, you're chasing smaller gains, but in the beginning, the gains are really pretty big.
Yeah.
And you realize things like, up until that point, we'd built our own molding presses. So we design them, we build them, we buy the hydraulics, we get the tools made and stuff, and the machine parts in, and then we would assemble it, manufacture it, and then start making product. And somewhere along the line, we were trying to build a double daylight, meaning two cavities at the same time. And it was a major struggle. And I said to Todd Wingett, who worked for Zipp for 30 years, just an amazing guy, did the Cape Epic with him years later, and just an incredible engineer, ex-Marine. I said, Todd, we can't carry on like this. You see what you can do to find us a hydraulic press company that would be willing to build, because and this is the naivety of being in a small business. You convince yourself nobody can build a press like that, right? Nobody can do that. Only we have to do it because what we make is so different. Then, of course, Todd goes off, finds 3 companies. We go to visit, we'll find more than that. And we narrow it down to 3. We go visit these 3 guys. Turns out one of the best part turned into an incredible partner for us was up in Wabash, Indiana. I mean, literally a couple of hours away. And we went up there and walk in the facility and start to look at the presses that they are building for industry, rubber molding. And I mean, and think, oh my word, that thing's bigger than my house, Okay, so maybe we don't have to build our own presses.
Yeah. They know what they're doing.
And they know what they're doing. So we said, would you be interested? Oh, yeah. So they sent a couple of engineers down. They're with us a day or two. They took copies, all the PLC programming. They took all the measurements, they go back. A month later, we get a quote. We're like, unbelievable. So huge step for us. And I think if you think of your if every entrepreneur could think back and go over these incredibly naive steps that you take along the way, and now it's so funny, when you think about it, how you imagined this position, and it was completely different to that, right? It was just completely different. So I think you just have to be open to all the input, and once those guys came on board, it changed everything. I mean, it just changed everything, because now we knew we'd have to wait 60, 90 days to have them build something. But my thinking changes from, well, if I put a press on the floor, that press can make X amount of product.
Right.
Where am I going to sell that much product, right? Where is that product going to go? And that becomes the strategy. It's no longer, can I afford to build a press? Can I do, all those considerations are out of the way. Now it becomes a sales opportunity. Where is that going to go? And along the way, we're trying to get into the road racing, and your perspective is so much more learned than mine. But now, again, we don't know, right? None of us have ever raced a bike, even at this point. Well, that's not true. I have guys in the company that have raced a bike, but none of us understand at that level, right? We don't know how you guys operate, how that world works. And out of the blue, Jeff Pierce, phone rings, Jeff Pierce. Jeff rode for LA Sheriff Chevrolet, if you remember those guys, down in Southern California-based team. When we developed the 303, we said, hey, this is the vehicle to get into road racing with. So we went, we had always been working with the sheriffs, and we said to them, Steve Haig, remember, and Malcolm, the guy from England. Anyway, very good crowd, right? And they won Philly numerous times. They were, they were very dominant and great to work with. Super professional people, really great. And we built the 303, and we said to the lads, okay, this is a road racing specific product. We would love to have you, ride this in as many races as you can. And so that's sort of what we were doing. Well, Jeff was racing for them, and he retired. And he was working for GT Bikes. I didn't know any of that. The phone rings one day. They've got an opportunity. GT had this mid-season opportunity to work with Lotto, the Lotto team out of Belgium.
Yeah.
Because they were getting a frame from a French manufacturer, a bonded aluminum frame that kept failing. And so the team finally, I don't know, who knows what the background to a decision like that would be, a major decision, right? And they just said, we can't handle it anymore. We're out in the middle of a season. And GT sort of swooped in. Great opportunity, right? So GT jumps in, gets the Lotto guys sorted out, building just aluminium frame, nice, but aluminium road frames, and getting them going on these things. And Jeff said, "Listen, we're gonna buy just normal wheels for the stages, but we need a TT supplier." Yeah. Would you be interested? We're absolutely. By now, we're building the 404s, so we knew we could put a 404 in the front and a disc on the rear, and this is our beginning, our segue finally into the pro peloton. So now that gives, as a brand, we have an opportunity to talk to, serious road riders or recreationally serious road riders. And so, of course, we jump on it and we make this stuff and get it, and just, reacting like chicken with a head off, right? But we're everybody's so excited. We get into it. Well, we made some 404 rears for the team as well, just in case it's a super windy day. And Jeff had that experience too, so he knew what to ask for. Well, they had Jackie Durand was riding in that team. And Jackie, as you know better than I, would go off on these, 150K solo off the front, I'll see you later kind of things.
Right.
Jeff calls one day and says, well, Jackie really likes these wheels. He's wondering if he could just ride them in a road stage. And we said, absolutely, we'll send you some more. And so literally our opportunities coming to us, of course we wanted it, but we had no idea how to negotiate it, how to make that happen. It was purely opportunistic. Jackie gets the wheels, he gets on them, loves them, goes off on these stages in the tour by himself off the front with a product that's discernibly different on the bike on television.
Yep.
Right? Nobody in the peloton has deep section carbon rims at this point. Nobody. He's the only guy. And of course, he loves that, right? And who else used to do it was Steve Haig used to do that at LA Sheriffs. He would get in these long road stages, and if he rolled up with 404s, then everybody's like, "Oh no, here we go!" Haig's going off the front. And anyway, Jackie did the brand an enormous favor, and essentially did every wheel brand out there an enormous favor because people now could see. It was obviously noticeable.
Yeah.
And that gave us the opportunity to talk to eventually CSC.
Right.
So so that's sort of segued into that. Lotto eventually got a big time sponsor, and of course we couldn't put the kind of money in that they wanted even at that stage. So it was an incredible opportunity, and we were lucky enough to be a part of it. And unfortunately, we were able to segue, from that. Or parlay that into the CSC relationship, which we did with Gerard. So Gerard and Sabella and Zipp were really building themselves alongside each other, and we would pick up athletes together, triathletes particularly, and do this package. And if I ran an ad for a wheel, I would pretty much use a Cervelo in every ad, and if he ran an ad, he would run with Zipp wheels, and so it was this symbiotic, drive. Yeah, and then we went to CSC basically together to put the package, the bike, wheel, and whole technology package in at CSC. And if you remember, Bjarne Riis was assembling just like this incredible team, right?
Absolutely.
Tyler Hamilton, Fabian Cancellara, Jens Vogt. I mean, it was, wow, Bobby Julich. There's some incredible athletes in there.
Yeah. Did you, when you had the request to put the 404s in a road stage, did you have any apprehension? Which is to say, it hadn't been proven out. It had been proven out in a straight line in a time trial. But if no one had ever done it, and you said it with confidence, yeah, absolutely, we'll send some 404s over. Were you like, well, we certainly hope this works because it's such a great opportunity? Or were you looking back at Spinergy days saying, uh-oh, I can't wait for the UCI to crack down on us?
That's right. No, I think you always there's always a fear in the back of your mind, right? You've got to hope. And our conversations with the team was always like, hey, if this is even with Haig when he was doing it with the sheriffs, we'd say, if you think the road surface is precarious, I would not do that, right? Because impact damage is going to be your worst. So if you are in a road that potentially has potholes all over the place, right. you know, the advantage of a tubular, as you know, is you can sometimes have an impact damage on the rim, but the tire doesn't go down.
Of course.
So you can actually, continue to rest. And the guys, when we started to do our Roubaix testing with the CSC riders and stuff, they were amazed that those tubulars would stay. The rim looked like rubbish. There'd be 4 or 5 impacts on it, but the tire was actually still inflated. And so at that time, there was always apprehension there, but we had to just leave it to the team to make the right decision. We did say, listen, it's not for every single stage, every single day, because we can't control any of that environment. And neither can you. But, if somebody's feeling up for it, you go for it. And then honestly, half the time they never told us. We'd see it in the press, right? We'd see photos in a magazine like, they ran those things in that race. Like Tour de Gila, I think it was called. Remember down in Arizona or something?
Absolutely, yeah, in New Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, like, look at that. And a great photo, deep section rims front and rear. And it takes pioneers like that who don't mind standing out. It takes the Jackies and the Higgs of the world to say, this is an advantage. I know it's an advantage. I don't mind that people are looking at me. I don't mind that the number's on my back. I'm off, right? Yeah. I'm going for it. How many stages did Jackie win off the front? It doesn't matter. From a product sponsorship perspective, it doesn't matter.
Right.
He did for us, he did for the brand, and he did now for what is the whole category, an immense amount of work to just change the perspective.
Right. So thinking of those early days that you're working with teams, and especially when you have presumably a little bit more communication and ability to impact change with CSC and Cervelo test team eventually, I think every sponsor would love to have direct communication with the team and athletes and give and receive a lot of feedback. And the reality of getting that feedback is often, up against this is a traditional sport. So it's like, from the sponsor, you're supposed to give a product and shut up and maybe show up at the Tour de France. How the purpose of, especially the Cervelo test team, and that's where you and I overlap, is it was sponsor forward. It was with the intention of having a lot of feedback and the ability to impact change. How nimble was the company? So how quickly could you receive feedback and make changes? Or like, was that a short-term thing or sort of year over year?
No, by the time we were at that point, that's a really good question. By the time we were at that point, we actually had capacity. So, meaning excess capacity. I wanted to put in a press purely to have as a spare. And so particularly luxury, something we'd never ever had, in our whole existence, right? Something that was spare. No deployment ever went that way. So, but we looked at this and said, listen, if there's something we need to do, we need to have molding capacity to try something new, and we need to be able to do it quick. And it's twofold. One, it was great support for the teams and the athletes out there that were on our product. But secondarily, it allowed us to R&D things very quickly. By now we've got a lab of our own. We can do impact testing. We're doing lateral stiffness testing. And the lads would come up. Josh and Mike and the guys would come up with ideas like, hey, what if we tried this, or what if we reversed that laminate, and that we might be able to eliminate some weight, or we might be able to change this. And so what? Now you can do it, right? You're not taking away from production in order to do that test. And in our space, as you know, it's all about innovation. Mm-hmm. And at this point in the game, what is that? 04, 05, 06. There are lots of brands now on the market. It's not, you're no longer Head and Zipp, slugging it out. There's a lot of brands on the market.
Yeah.
It was, I think we were particularly fast and open to any input that we got. I mean, I'll tell you, for an example, not even rim related, hub related. We start working with CSC. First off, the agreement for the amount of product that we have to ship there is just like, how many? Yeah. How many wheels? It's just, you're just shocked at how much product they're going to need. Mm-hmm. And right, so we enter into this agreement, and Josh, who runs Silka today, Josh is my lead design engineer, and Josh goes over, I think it was for Dauphiné, okay. And he's just going to go over and meet the team. They're in 2 or 3 days, and he's going to go and meet up with those guys, and of course they all know him by now, and we've got a good relationship. We had a technical guy, Nick, who still works at SRAM, and Nick would go a couple times a year to go through all the product, service all the product, evaluate, cut sections of the rims that had unusual failures, bring it back for the engineers. So we really used the teams to learn at a rapid rate. Mm-hmm. But the first lesson, of course, came way faster than we expected and was way worse than we ever expected. The guys are racing, as you know, the joy of racing early season classics, right? Mm-hmm. The misery of the weather and the road conditions and all the rest of it. Right. He goes to Dauphiné, start talking to the mechanics. Oh, everything's great. Oh, yeah, by the way, hey, Josh, in the back of the truck, up at the front of the truck there's a bunch of wheels up there. They're no good. You need to go look at those. Okay. Starts to pull them out. And we didn't have phones at that point. He could have, done a video of it, and we would probably not have believed it. But he takes the hub apart. First, it's solid, right? He can't even rotate it, and very difficult to get apart. But he gets the wrenches on it. They break this thing apart, and he starts to pull it out, and it comes out, I kid you not, like coffee grounds. You're thinking, what? He's looking and thinking, what is that stuff? How did that get in there? And we discover, of course, when they degrease the bike, regardless of where it's been racing, it's generally diesel fuel, right? Then they use a pressure washer to drive the diesel into all of the crevices on a bike where you shouldn't be putting diesel fuel, right? And that diesel fuel attacks the grease and the oil and all the rest of it, dissolves it. Pressure washer washes it out. Oh, and by the way, puts water in there as well. They clean it all up. Yeah, clean it all up, hang it up, and of course don't do anything to it. Well, all that is a beautiful recipe for massive oxidation on steel ball bearings and steel bearing races, and it just incredible mess.
So very shiny from the outside.
Oh yeah, look good though. Look good. Yeah. And then when they go to put them on the bike and they won't spin, oh, that's rubbish, I'll just put it up there, right? And he starts to take one wheel apart after the next, and he's just horrified, calls from the, I think, hotel or a pay booth just to say, well, we've got a major problem. Wow. How many wheels are there? Oh, it's X amount. We're like, oh my goodness, we better do something about this. And then we had some great advice. A gentleman that I can't remember the name of from Trek, who was working with their team. He said to Josh, I think at that event on a later day, he said, remember that any failure in the Tour de France is the manufacturer's fault. We're like, what?
And puts the onus back on you.
Always back on the manufacturer, right? And I remember years later, George Hincapie fell. Remember in the Paris-Roubaix, and his stem broke.
Yep.
No, not the stem. Sorry, steer tube broke. Right,
sheared off.
And of course, everybody thought, well, that must be a Trek problem. No, it turns out he'd hit the ground, I think, twice already that day. Yeah. Right. So I don't know the facts, but I doubt that was a Trek problem. I just think it was an accumulation of, fractures that happened during the course of the day. But now we're headed to the Tour de France. So we actually said to Nick to go back to, and what they do with the tours. You know all of this, but for the benefit of the listeners, they pull all the equipment back to the service course to go through it all for the Tour de France, right? And so we sent Nick with a whole pile of space, shipped a bunch of stuff. He took a bunch of stuff and he went into the service course for literally a week and went through every wheel and tore them apart, replaced anything that was even questionable, got replaced and repaired and fixed and sorted and went back on the bikes. And so that these guys could go to the tour feeling totally confident that, that Zipp has done everything they can to be ready. Mm-hmm. And it went. Thankfully, it was great. The result was awesome, and we had no mechanic. When I say that, I mean there was no mechanical things that were unexplainable. But then that became a pattern. So Nick then went at least twice a year to go through it because Tyler left that team and went to Phonak, and we didn't really need a second team, but because Tyler had gone over there and the guys at Phonak were so keen. Okay, Tyler. We really liked working with Tyler. He was very articulate and intelligent, and so get that product over there. Like, oh my word! So now we have two teams, right? So Nick's got double the work when he goes over, and but also the benefit of learning from this trial by fire is that your product's improving all the time, right? So our seals got better, our dust shields got better so that the seal on the bearing didn't have to do as much work. We could improve, all the other things. And these are all marginal. They're all tiny, but they're all accretive. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's that was how it went. And then of course Girard, as you know, went with his team was like, okay, let's shift that from hey, the team wants this, and isn't telling you anything unless you go to hey, we use this as a laboratory and invest in it, and then learn from it at a much more rapid rate. Yeah, which I think was the concept behind the test team.
Yeah, certainly. I look back at it as a team ahead of its time for a variety of reasons, from that sponsor forward perspective, from the media it produced, so on and so forth. And before going down that avenue, I'm curious about your knowledge, your firsthand viewership of it all. What is the case where things, the wheels are being produced in the US, and now I feel like the vast majority of anything cycling related is produced in Asia. What is the beginning of that migration like, where production is taking place off seas? What do you witness? What do you learn? What are the takeaways now, 30 years later?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. While under my tutelage, we only made in the US. We also were very strict about letting anybody in the factory. I mean, nobody got in unless you were our banker or a distributor or a rep. I mean, you just did not get in the factory. And we realized, because my guys, if we went to a factory, meaning my engineering guys and myself, if we went to a factory, all we did was learn, right? It didn't, not necessarily a wheel company, any factory, because we were all so, especially the engineering team, were so interested in stuff, right? Machines and product, and how do they do that? And this inquisitive mindset. And so imagine, and I'd say to the lads, well, imagine we walk into this factory. What can you learn? Oh my word! There's no end to what could be learned if we did that. And so it was a hard rule. We were approached numerous times by Asian companies that were already molding carbon frames. We're moving into the frames. I started in Asia, if I recall correctly, with front forks. Okay. And remember carbon forks, and even people like Merlin and Subroda and brands like that were you could buy your bike with a carbon fork. That's sort of, and those originally came from the States, but I think the fork, which ironically is one of the hardest products to make out of carbon, but ironically that sort of found traction in Asia, and probably because some American companies said, hey, these are really hard to make with a lot of labor. We should go to Asia with this, So I don't think that was strategic. I think it was opportunistic. But that's how it started. Then, of course, the lads, and very, very industrious, they started looking at frames going, well, I think we can build that in carbon. And so in the beginning, it's just replication of aluminium. And then they go, oh, well, hold on a second. We've got all kinds of flexibility with carbon. We could make aero tubes. We could make square tubes. We could do oblong tubes, you can't, and you can vary the wall thickness, which would take the weight down. Right. Aluminium bikes are extruded, which means the wall thickness is the same. So you're carrying weight in the middle of the tubes that you don't need, right? You don't. So carbon allows you to feather that weight and do it perfectly. So I think it starts with forks, it goes to frames, and we were approached numerous times by very, very capable carbon manufacturers to say, well, can we license them? Can we? And we just said, I just said no. We can't do that. That's not what we do. And the intention was to just delay what we saw as the inevitable migration of this technology to Asia. Yeah. Eventually somebody's going to go, but it won't be us. And then that's essentially what you see today. Now, all these years later, there are some excellent Chinese rim manufacturers, Chinese and Taiwanese rim companies and wheel companies making very, very good product. I mean, very good product. I mean, the carbon clincher, for example, 20 years ago, a carbon clincher was almost an imagination, right? It's like how on earth are we going to make that strong enough? But of course, you're dealing with rim brakes, right? Rim brakes. So there's heat, and heat is the enemy of a thermoset carbon material. So we can't control how much heat because we can't control how long the people hold them on. Some folks hold them on way too long, never let them off. There's no cooling. You can't control any of that. So rim brakes are a proper issue, and disc comes along, and suddenly mountain bike is open. So now all you're really doing is building a rim that can handle impact, but you can build a carbon rim. So, and it takes a while to get discs onto road bikes, but of course that changes everything. Now nobody is talking about that. It's not a factor because we're 100% disc, right? So that thing's gone. Now, carbon clincher is possible because you can actually have those carbon walls stand up like that. Whereas if you're trying to make it stand up like that and heating the rim to 120, it can't. You just won't do it, or you cannot do it, and keep them there. Right, they'll do that. Right. So you're increasing the pressure in the tire because of the heat. You're softening the resin and the carbon because of the heat, and of course, this is pushing. It's just all the geometry is totally working against you.
Yeah, everything works perfectly in a vacuum, and then
that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's like the George Foreman thing, right? Everything's going great till somebody hits you in the mouth.
In the nose, exactly. So you said under your ownership, you were entirely U.S. made, and you just saw an inevitability to it going overseas. What was your eventual exit from Zipp and the acquisition by SRAM?
We got to the point. I mean, we were at that point. This was 2007. We were the number one brand in triathlon, had been now for numerous years. And it was an opportunity. We either have to, the company as Zipp either has to make other acquisitions, right? We need to, because now your growth, we have been growing at a considerable rate, 35% per year for 10 years, basically. Wow. Your ability to compound that is, the degree of difficulty just goes through the roof, right? Yeah. You just cannot sustain. So this is how companies look at this and say, okay, this is an opportunity to do something different. Sometimes that includes acquisition, where we go and you find another company to acquire, to pull in that would be an accretive volume and eventually accretive profitability. Or you put it into the hands of somebody that is going to do that with it, So, and this was really the road that we were following. And honestly, I was open, as were both my investors, and we were open to saying, okay, let's just see, what the world brings us. And SRAM was the one strategic that stayed in the process. We ran the process. We went to the market, said, this is what we have. And we're looking for, the future. What does the future look like? There were other strategics, but SRAM was the last remaining strategic in the game. And there were then 4 financial buyers competing with SRAM.
Okay.
The financial buy is a little bit different in that they would come in and say, listen, this is all cool and you've got a great company, but now what are you going to do? And their entire play is to assist you or help you build the company to the next level. And then there's another exit, right, where it gets sold and they make their money. But for that to work, they need to retain the entire team. So I would have stayed to build it for that next level, which was no problem. I was thoroughly enjoying running the company, and my team essentially we'd keep the whole team together, except we have theoretically more gunpowder to go and do other stuff with. So it was that or strategic. And at the end of the day, the financial buyers' offers to purchase Zipp were actually higher than SRAM's. But we looked at this and said, if we do this correctly with SRAM, they have better medical, they have a retirement plan, they have all the security that we even at that stage couldn't possibly match a company like that. Yep. They have excellent global distribution, and they don't have wheels, so we could come in as the wheel brand, and they were very keen to have us as the wheel brand, and then that would sort of round out their offering, to companies and OEMs and things like that, and so. The end of the day, we obviously went that direction. And then I stuck around for a couple of years, and Stan and the guys at SRAM were keen to keep me there to do a very interesting project. But I declined only because I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and I really love the battle of the early stage. I must like to suffer somehow, except I can't do it on a bike very well. But
cyclists all know how to suffer, no matter what.
Oh my gosh! But from a business perspective, something I'm very passionate about. I just felt like perhaps I could share my experience with other small companies, with entrepreneurs that were also trying to achieve something. And if I could do that successfully, then potentially they could realize their objectives and their life goals. And so. It was difficult. I mean, how do you walk away from something you run and build passionately for 20 years? Yeah. And SRAM was incredibly gracious. I could call any of those guys, and they would take my call at any time after that. So they treated employees very well. So that whole transition went about as well as if you read through business books, it's about as well as it could possibly have gone.
Excellent. That is a very good thing. So speaking of that entrepreneurial, getting down in the trenches spirit, is fundraiser the next avenue?
Fundraiser is certainly something I've done. Prior to fundraiser, post Zipp, I got involved in a number of small companies, some in the software space.
Oh, interesting.
Which has been super educational for me. But I also realized everything you think you've learned in business doesn't necessarily translate to being some assistance to somebody else if they're in a different category. Yeah. So some of the mentality in the tech space is nothing wrong with it. It's just completely different to manufacturing and product sales, right? So the objective there is to just keep growing. And if you keep growing, you keep raising money. And if you keep raising money, you can keep growing. And then eventually somebody comes along and buys you on a multiple of sales as opposed to profitability.
Yep.
This is not normal, quote unquote normal. This is normal in tech. It's not normal, generally speaking. So I did realize through that process that I'm much more a thing guy. I like to build something. I want to make something. I want to figure out how to make it. If it's hard, as I said to Zipp guys for years, if it's difficult, that's great. We want the degree of difficulty to be high because you're going to limit your competition. I work with companies today that make really hard stuff and do hard things, and it's very advantageous from my perspective, putting your company in a position like that where you're willing to do those hard yards for a long time.
Yeah.
All it does is make everybody else if they want to compete, they've got to bring the same attitude, the same stamina, the same creativity, and I see that as a strategic strength. That's something that an organization really needs to have. So I was involved in I am still involved in some of those companies. I'm out of nearly every tech investment I got into, either through just getting out or it got sold or something. And I will not go back into those. I've learned a lot from that experience. But Fundraiser was an idea to do what I sort of have been doing on a small individual basis, but do it on a little more formal effort, right? A lot more formal effort, actually, with Renee from 3T, who built 3T and really was one of the drivers of gravel bikes. Gerard at Sabello, partner in Sabello, that built his company alongside Zipp, and then and myself. So we have this unique. All three of us have been fortunate enough to have exits in the industry, and we had talked about this idea of putting together a fund, doing it from a private equity perspective, and then looking at early stage, because we want to be involved. We are product people, and we want to be on the board. We'd love to be part of the strategic decision making, and so this was like, well, maybe we could do this as a group. It wouldn't be because as an individual, you have a certain capacity, right? And there are certain weeks where I am out of capacity. I just too much happening. But with three of us, and those two being in Europe, it does give us an exposure in both in America and Europe, and allows us to look at a lot of different organizations, a lot of opportunities. But you're totally right. The original motivation was to find early stage, some of them even pre-revenue opportunities, and see whether we can assist, see whether we can help, see whether we can take them maybe to the next step. And And another brand new experience I'm learning at this point in my career is, well, how do you set up a private equity fund? And how do you manage a private equity fund?
The things you learn.
That's right. I think you spend your life as a perpetual student, right? I mean, I find today I'm just as fascinated by things I don't know. I think this whole AI thing for me is just absolutely mind-bending and
so rapid.
Well, so fast. There's nothing like this. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. How about, just talk a little bit more about Fundraiser in the specific direction that you all operate, because you said, you dabbled in software and realized that wasn't exactly your cup of tea. You like hardware, you like things, as do Renee and Gerard. Taking a line out of LinkedIn lingo, Fundraiser strives to make a positive impact by supporting the change from car mobility to micro-mobility in congested areas. So I think the majority of our listeners are cyclists and appreciate self-propelled travel and that sort of thing. What are some of the specifics of that car mobility to micro-mobility that Fundraiser pursues?
That's a great question. So what's happening in Europe is legislation is literally going through that prevents combustion engines from being in certain parts of certain cities. Now, they just can't go there, and they've closed down roads. So the only way, if you're a florist or a butcher or a candlestick maker and you need to get supplies, it's either on a bicycle or it's a battery-assisted bike of some kind, or maybe a 3 or 4 wheeler. Some sort of a commercial delivery type vehicle that can get into those areas. So legislation is actually a part of it. In Europe, it is happening. I think in Paris, for example, we always, for years in our industry, and you probably have first-hand experience, we used to joke about Paris, right? Because the biggest bike event in the world is in Paris, and you can't ride your bike safely, right? It was terrible. And they've spent millions, hundreds of millions, fixing that, rectifying that problem, taking roads away from cars and turned them into pedestrian. I think they've done an incredible job. But that sort of thing is happening. Seville, Spain has done it. There are cities that are just making this big shift, which is driving a need for vehicles that need was never driven before. It was an interest, right? It was like, oh, I think we could build a small thing that could get into that street or this alley or, and so, yeah. But there was no drive. There's no compelling reason for companies to spend a lot of money to switch from the white no-name, delivery combustion engine vehicle to something alternative. The other thing that's happened, so that's going on. The other thing that's to us, well, certainly to me, is fascinating in our bike industry is, I think as bike manufacturers in the industry and having not really been a full bike supplier in the game, I think we look at it and say, hey, everybody's opportunistic. So we have these road bikes, and then somebody's riding mountain. Hey, okay, let's build a mountain bike. So now we have road bikes, and we have mountain bikes. Hey, we need a cruiser. So, all right, who knows how to build it? Let's build a cruiser, and we build a cruiser. So now we've got this, and we got this, and we got this. We got these categories. We've got mountain, we've got road, we've got cruisers. Oh, in Europe, they're selling these electric bikes, and we need them. These commuter bikes need to have electric motors. Okay, well, let's build one of those. And then it's sort of like boxes that get checked, now you've got product managers running those categories. And we look at all of that. But what has happened with the e-bike, that has never happened with any other bike, is that the technology there is attracting people, industries, companies from outside the mobility space, right? So this is where software companies are looking at saying, hey, we could control that. We could control that with an algorithm. We don't need a drivetrain. We don't need that, so they come in with a completely different perspective. These are people that actually don't have any bike experience. Yeah. So those original e-bikes, and I use it as a very general term, were we build a thing that looks like a bike. We put a bike drivetrain on it. Then we assist it with a motor, and now we need a battery. Okay, cool. To us as bike guys, that looks like a bike, acts like a bike, but it's helping you ride. That's pretty cool. No, I'm not going to ride one, but that's pretty cool. Or I'll get one for my wife or my kids, or something like that. And then you look at it and say, then what happens is people come along and say, there's a much better way to do that. And so we have seen development. So from a fundraising perspective, now we're dealing with, I think Renee said, we have chatted to or seen 800 different presentations.
Wow.
In 2 years. And it's everything from software to hardware to algorithm writers, mathematicians, PhDs, people that are in the game that would never, they're not cyclists. Yeah. They would never be in our space. So what this has done is it has attracted unbelievable brain power to the world of cycling.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because there's so many new, cool, groovy things coming out, and you look and go, wow, that's super clever. I'll give you an example. If you have a vehicle that's got pedals, you can go in a bike lane. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So now this is a mentality outside the bike industry. Well, okay, but the gear ratios are easily represented. I can, if you give me electric motor and a controller, I can create whatever gear ratios you want. Oh, in fact, I can give you 20 gear ratios if that's what you want. Mm-hmm. I can just do it in the algorithm. I can make it program. But you can't have a throttle, but it needs to take it from the pedal. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just measure the speed of the rotation and the force that's going in there through a power meter, right? And then I'll use that to drive the algorithm to drive the motor that's in the back. So now you have a thing that looks like a bike in that it has pedals. Mm-hmm. And it looks like a bike, and the motor is in the back wheel. But actually, the pedals are not driving the bike forward. They are driving a algorithm that determines how much assistance to give you in the back wheel.
So is it a chainless bike?
Chainless, gone, nothing, zero. And wow. And the need for this, it comes from. We're going to go from this white delivery vehicle, combustion engine, to something else that's going to deliver it. Oh, by the way, this has got a drivetrain on it, which you need to maintain, by the way. You need to put lube on it. Ask the average delivery driver how many times he's maintained his white truck, right?
Yeah.
Maintenance is never part of the program. Yeah. So all of a sudden, you've got bike drivetrains in applications that are breaking down. That are struggling, not because they're designed poorly, not because they're bad, because nobody maintains them, nobody does anything. And so all of a sudden, you've got something that has, other than it looks like a bike, it has it has two wheels as a frame, and it has some capacity to carry some either the mail or delivery or packages or whatever it is. It's actually got nothing to do with anything in the current bike industry other than it has wheels and disc brakes.
Yeah. How much municipal pushback is there from that? You know, we hear people don't like e-bikes and they're dangerous and people are using them purely as motorcycles. I mean, I guess the question is almost, because we're changing the definition of a bicycle in that regard, then it's almost municipality to municipality to say a bike is self-propelled by a chain, or a bike is self-propelled by a bike, or a bike just has a pedal system. I guess I don't really have a question there. I'm curious if you see any pushback town to town, city to city, country to country in that regard.
Absolutely right. You've got bikes, you know, and I think the first reaction, probably the right reaction, is to limit speed, right? Yeah. So in the US, you can't go more than 25 miles an hour. Well, anybody that's ridden an actual bike, you know how hard it is to go 25 miles an hour, right? I mean, that's proper work, and not the average guys can't do it, right? You can't do it. Whereas on an e-bike, you can easily do it. So you've got people that are doing 25 miles an hour on a bike. Yep. They haven't ridden a bike in, I have friends, they haven't ridden a bike in 40 years, 50 years. Right. And they are now riding an e-bike because it's wonderful and it's cool and I can go for coffee. And guess what? I can do 25 miles an hour.
And I don't need a license to go do it.
No, exactly. So I totally see how there's pushback. Plus, there's bike categories out there now that actually circumvent legislation, right? There are these bikes that don't really have pedals but have electric motors and act and look and carry on like bikes. So they're out there, the chopper style bike and the lifestyle, that's a better word, lifestyle looking bikes, and these jolly kids are here and they're doing wheelies on the sidewalk, and when I was a kid, we were doing wheelies on the sidewalk, you know. So I mean, I don't know why it's today a bit of a problem. We built ramps in the middle of the road, for Pete's sake, you know. So I don't know that problem is new. I just think that people haven't seen it before, and in fairness, they're coming at them much faster, right? Us on a bike as a kid, a push bike, a pedal bike, it's nothing like somebody coming at you on an e-bike. So. To answer the non-question, it's the Wild West at the moment. I think municipalities are struggling with the right legislation. If I create bike lanes and they now, in some delivery vehicle, or the postman jumps in there and he's got a 3-wheeler bike, is that acceptable? I mean, I don't have the answer, but these are the questions, right? Oh, wait, that guy built a 4-wheeler, which can handle, 600 kilograms or 500 kilograms of load. So like DHL or FedEx, they could be using, well, is it a 4-wheeler? So is that no, wait a minute. It's a 4-wheeler, it's got pedals.
Right.
Is that a car? I mean, so this is what makes it all, to me at least, I think to all of us at Fundraiser, we look at this and say, it's so fascinating that the whole bike industry has just been, this category in the bike industry is just being sort of blown open. Because so much technology exists outside of our industry, and of course is now it was migrating its way in, it's now coming at a much more rapid rate. So I don't actually have an answer, and I totally empathize with all of the municipalities and cities out there, because this is a definite struggle. And I think you are correct. I think you're going to see different rules in different places. We already have the speed. I think the only thing that's fixed today is that it's with 25K, I think, in Europe, and 25 miles an hour in America. And that's what they've done. Oh, but then you could get a speed pedelec, right, in Europe, which is 45K. Fabulous to ride. You would love riding it. You guys are just, as a cyclist, you can get on that. It's like, and these are people doing 25, 30 kilometer commutes to work.
Right.
No problem. Now that has to be licensed. It needs a little plate, but it is a category. It's almost, I think it's classified as a moped, essentially. So people are using, things like that. And it's a fascinating product, bringing incredible technology. So you imagine, VW's been selling Golfs for years, and they bring out the first GTI, right? Like,
whole new ball game.
That's right. It changes the game. And then all of a sudden, people are doing things with GTIs that they never would have done with the VW Golf, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just that is so exciting because there's accessory. We are involved in accessory products, hardware, and technology currently. Much of it is a safety objective, towards a safety objective and/or performance. So that, ironically, this is the irony of Fundraiser, is that being performance, all our brands were performance minded, right? We were all performance oriented. And part of our objective, at least a third of our investments, we would love to be in performance product. Mm-hmm. And at this moment in time, we're not actually in one. We've spoken to numerous companies, as I just mentioned, and out of the 5 that we're in, none of them are pure performance. Yeah. They're all something else, and either a safety concern, or just for the benefit of commuting. Yeah. And so it's just a very interesting development there, and I think that's probably what's got all of us truly excited. Is okay. What is truly possible now? And honestly, we can't answer that question, because next week we might meet somebody that's got the next idea. Yeah. And that's how rapidly it's coming. I mean, that's how rapidly it's developing.
At this point in the conversation, I realized that we could have made this a 2-parter or much more and talked exclusively about Fundraiser. I am thrilled with the opening piece. I'm thrilled to hear that we are entering the Wild West. To the benefit of our listener, if you've made it this far, this is Fundraiser, Fundracer, in case you were just curious, our pronunciation and enunciation there. I'm going to say, Andy, you've been incredibly generous with your time. And so let's wrap up with what I call our 3 traditional questions. You are a cyclist, truth be told, not just a innovative business owner. So I have 3 questions related to the bike. 1, what is your favorite place to ride a bike? Number 2, where in the world would you like to ride a bike that you've never ridden? And number 3, with whom would you love to share a ride, a conversation, the traditional coffee stop shop, so on and so forth. So, favorite place to ride a bike?
I would have to say, with the mountain biking infrastructure in South Africa, currently, the Cape Epic 20 years ago started, and it has sprouted this industry. So It is without doubt one of the most amazing places to ride a mountain bike, because every day you can ride 100K and be in a different place every time. So I'd definitely have to say the mountain biking trails of South Africa.
That's amazing. I love that. Very new answer to the podcast. Where in the world would you like to ride that you've never ridden?
Great question. I have been very fortunate to ride in a lot of places, but I would love to go to South America. I'd love to ride maybe on the Chilean coast or something like that. There was a ride that used to happen in Patagonia, and just a touring ride. I thought, that would be something I would do. Unfortunately, it's not held anymore, but something like that. In South America, I've only been to a couple of times, always on business, never ridden a bike down there. I'd love to go on an adventure down there.
Nice. Think answer. And with whom would you like to share that experience? They don't need to be a cyclist.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough at one point in my career, post Zipp, to work with a gentleman called Hap Klopp. And Hap Klopp was a co-founder of North Face. And we were working on a project together on a due diligence team for a potential acquisition, which didn't go together, but it was a most amazing experience for me, because I got to enjoy this wisdom and very polished style from Hap. And he just willingly shared, all of his knowledge, business knowledge, etc. But he had a passion for the outdoors. And, one of the people I think would be fascinating to spend some time with on a coffee ride, having a coffee, is Yvon Chouinard. who started Patagonia. I think that would just be, and I've read his book, and not that he's a hero to me, but I just really appreciate the completely different perspective, right? The fact that he can think about things in a completely different way. And I think he would open your eyes. I mean, I think anybody would sit and talk to him for half an hour, you're going to learn something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think from one innovator to another, he would also appreciate that conversation. So, terrific answer. Andy Ording, I am thrilled with your generosity this morning. I'm the recipient of the support of Zipp, so thank you for being part of that good long ride.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything to do with it, but I am happy to have you in the family.
Well, thank you. Wish you a great holiday season.
Yeah, you too. You and your family, all the very best. Stay healthy, stay warm, and I so appreciate your expertise and time, and welcome any opportunity.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Andy.
All right, mate.